The documents we are publishing today are one of the largest government publications ever laid before this House.
Lots of questions about that vetting.
This is fascinating because this is lifting the lid a bit on some of the troubles of the government.
There's a lot we do know from 1,500 pages, a lot of embarrassing exchanges with cabinet ministers, for example, but there's plenty we don't know. And it's what we don't know, the known unknowns, that is bothering MPs.
How did he get this job? You know, there are all of these security problems, all of these conflicts of interest. How did he come from being such an outsider to being the person who was given the job?
So here they are, 3 volumes, 1,500 pages, emails, WhatsApps, biting political analysis, and a whole lot of asterisks. The Mandelson files are big, heavy and expensive, as the PM's Chief Secretary confessed in the Commons.
The documents we are publishing today are one of the largest government publications ever laid before this House. This disclosure process has been wide-ranging, costing the Cabinet Office alone over £1 million.
Here's what the Tories wanted to know about the PM's appointment of Peter Mandelson as the UK ambassador to the US.
It was clear that due diligence was not followed. It is a failure that is visible from space. It is a failure that will define this Prime Minister's premiership. It is a failure that will be written as his political epitaph.
When it comes to Mandelson's security clearance, there are several asterisks. Also missing are his personal phone messages and a mysterious absence of correspondence to and from the PM himself. But we did get plenty of juicy and cringy to and fro's between the disgraced Ambo and his friends in the Cabinet. Friends like this, the Welfare Secretary Pat McFadden, who previously wasted no time disowning Mandelson.
How I feel is a mixture of bewilderment, anger, and a sense of, yes, you're right, this is somebody I've known on a political level for 30 years.
Someone McFadden knew and, it turns out, shared his innermost political thoughts with, declaring the government climb down on welfare would destroy his, Starmer's, authority. And this one's going to come back to haunt him, bemoaning that every meeting I have is who can we tax in order to pay benefits to others? They're asking the wrong questions. Ouch. Or how about this chum, the former Health Secretary Wes Streeting, speaking not so long ago?
I'm embarrassed to have known Peter Mandelson. I hope that, more than anything else actually in those messages, I hope I haven't caused either embarrassment or discomfort for my Cabinet colleagues.
Embarrassment aplenty for Wes in the Mandelson files today. Mandelson bitches that the former Health Secretary sent him a wild, hysterical message and was having a midlife crisis. Oh dear. Before he was defenestrated, Mandelson was one of the architects of New Labour, so his verdict on Keir Starmer, he doesn't know what he wants, Number 10 is beleaguered and bereft, it needs a complete revamp, that will all hurt. But the PM was wounded already. 1,500 pages and many red faces later, these great tomes haven't as yet delivered a killer blow. Well, Labour peer Luciana Berger and Reform's Danny Kruger are on the sofa tonight, as well as our political editor Beth Rigby, so lots to discuss. Well, just tell me, Beth, first, I mean, what's your take? Actually, I think we're going to go to Sam first. Some of the backstabbing and backseat driving that goes on at the heart of government has been revealed, and we've had WhatsApps aplenty. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has been pouring through the documents today. Sam, take us through what stood out to you.
There are 3 things in these files: on vetting, on conflicts of interest, and most fascinatingly of all, on cabinet relations that are revealed in the 1,500-page document dump. Let's start with this. This is the head of security, and we're talking, first of all, about vetting and arguably the flaws in that process. Here's the head of security talking about how, essentially, stuff was waved through. He says that Lord Mandelson was starting early because we have some wiggle room in the process, and Lord Mandelson's going to be able to see documents working up to secret, that's a classification of documents, on the basis that he's already a Lord. That tells you the vibe, the kind of approach in government that there was to the vetting. So look at other comments by security figures. So a member of the UKSV, Government Security Group, wrote to Peter Mandelson to say, people that you've got personal friendship have basically got to be declared as part of your vetting. we will be looking to focus on those individuals that have current or recent contact with. But this appeared to cause problems. And the official then wrote to another ally of Peter Mandelson to say, and to the peer himself, to say, I suggest that you hand over the handful of names you mentioned, even though you don't consider them close contacts. That'll reassure the vetting team that you've been comprehensive, even though it's quite artificial. That's quite something for a junior official to say, basically admitting that there is a level of artifice in that vetting that was already going very fast, and he was already seeing documents before the vetting was completed. But it all came out here in a very clear statement on the 30th of January 2025 that the Security Department of the Foreign Office approved developed vetting clearance for Lord Mandelson. So that's one element of what happened. But there's another element connected to conflicts of interest and vetting and due diligence that these documents highlight and throw a new light on, which is Peter Mandelson's relationship with individuals and companies that he used to represent when he was a lobbyist before he joined government as ambassador. Now, one of the firms that was represented by his old company, Global Counsel, a lobbying firm, was Palantir. And there's all sorts of clues in the document about the relationship with Palantir that Peter Mandelson kept after the point where he became ambassador. Look at this. On the 17th of February 2025, he writes to Peter Thiel's assistant. Peter Thiel is one of the founders of Palantir, to ask whether he could meet him in Miami. Now, look at this. This is later in March 2025, and it's an email from an investor in Palantir inviting Lord Mandelson to dinner and to a forum, and saying he's coming with Louis. That's Louis Mosley. You can see him up there. Louis Mosley is the UK head of Palantir. And then look at this. In July 2024, he tries to get the Prime Minister to meet Peter Thiel, founder of Palantir, writing to Morgan McSweeney saying that the celebrated techie is in London until the 9th. So would the PM like to meet him? So it does seem, and there were questions in the Commons about this, that there are questions to be asked about what safeguards the government put in place around Peter Mandelson to protect their interests, given that there are figures who were lobbyists and that Peter Mandelson represented these figures when he was a lobbyist. But this tranche of documents will be remembered most of all for what it tells us about the state of mind of the cabinet, because they appeared to open up to Peter Mandelson. Now, this doesn't necessarily look like it, but it's a transcript of a WhatsApp conversation. There are quite a lot of these to come between a minister and Peter Mandelson. The minister in question here is Torsten Bell, a high-flying pensions minister, and Peter Mandelson's asking him about the government and asking him about the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and Torsten Bell says, obviously, the big picture is messy. And he goes on to say, Peter Mandelson goes on to reply, it's messy because the government doesn't do policy, generally speaking, well enough. And rather than rebutting that, rather than rejecting that, Torsten Bell basically tells a joke. He just goes, which government? Or we can look at another minister. This one is Pat McFadden. He is now the Work and Pensions Secretary. And here, in the middle of 2025, you have Peter Mandelson saying Keir is not leading from the front. Peter Mandelson was a time-to-time critic of Keir Starmer, but look, here is the verdict of Pat McFadden, who remains in the cabinet. He says about welfare, every meeting I have is, quote, who can we tax in order to pay benefits to others? They're asking the wrong questions. Pat McFadden clearly critical of the direction of travel, clearly unhappy with what his fellow MPs are asking, and suggesting privately to Peter Mandelson that this is a problem. I think that is playing into a caricature of the Labour Party that will do the party quite a lot of harm now it's been released. And on another point, Peter Mandel says, how is number 10 now in your view? And again, criticism, not good. Louis, Morgan and Vidya came to see me the other day. I don't think they know what they want. And if they pull me in, I'm not sure what to ask for to make it work. And I think that, again, gives you just a sense of the problems that there were in number 10. Keir Starmer, still the Prime Minister. Pat McFadden, still in the Cabinet. But people were falling all over themselves to curry favour and to get close to Peter Mandelson. This is Baroness Chapman, Jenny Chapman, a very close ally of Keir Starmer, and she invites herself effectively to stay in Peter Mandelson's residence in Washington because she's there for World Bank meetings. Peter Mandelson says, of course it's the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but we'll do a brunch for it at the Sunday residence. Amazing, thank you, kiss, kiss. That was the prevailing attitude to Peter Mandelson in these files. There was an element of hear no evil, see no evil amongst the wider government machine. Worth saying, some redactions in this document, quite a few. You don't get any sense of government policy. You don't get, because all of that was taken out for fear of embarrassing the Americans. There isn't Peter Mandelson's vetting file, so there is some stuff that we don't learn, but lots of embarrassing content that will be chewed over for some time to come.
This is what MPs in the chamber are discussing now. Everybody's leafing through 1,500 pages. It's really heavy. It's good for exercising the biceps. I want to show you one bit. Put those ones down. Page 62. Because there's a lot of redactions in here, and that's what's exercising MPs. And if you go to page 62 here, this really caught my eye. Vetting clearance certificate, Peter Mandelson, 3 asterisks. And so there's a lot we do know from 1,500 pages, a lot of embarrassing exchanges with cabinet ministers, for example. But there's plenty we don't know. And it's what we don't know, the known unknowns, that is bothering MPs. Well, Labour peer Luciana Berger and Reform's Danny Kruger are on the sofa tonight, as well as our political editor, Beth Rigby. Beth, just starting with you, it's those asterisks, isn't it? That, and what we don't know, you know, the omissions that are sort of occupying people, isn't it?
Well, look, there was a number of omissions because of 2 reasons. One, there is a police investigation into Lord Mandelson over whether or not he had committed misconduct in public office. He denies the allegations, but there is a police investigation pertaining to what he disclosed in the previous Labour administration, whether he passed market-sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein. He denies it, but there's a police investigation, and that has meant that some of the information that actually Keir Starmer says would exonerate him, would prove that he was misled by Peter Mandelson, has had to be redacted. It cannot be published until the police investigation is concluded. And Keir Starmer was very clear last year that he asked follow-up questions of Peter Mandelson about the relationship with Epstein, and he says, when that information is released, it will exonerate me. So for Keir Starmer, that was actually a negative, that information cannot come out. There's then also a slew of information that's also been redacted, and that's any information that is considered prejudicial to UK national security or international relations. So that's another chunk of information that has been redacted. Now, the Conservative Party in the chamber today, furious about that. They're saying it's a cover-up, that they're very angry about it. But, you know, that was the terms of trade when this humble address, which is the mechanism to get this transparency, this disclosure across the line, that was the compromise that was found, because the government didn't want to do anything to further damage the relationship with the US. But look, there is plenty in there. There is plenty in there that reveal a lot about this government.
Yeah, and I'll come back to what there is for a minute, but let's just address what isn't there, Luciana. I mean, you heard Beth set out the reasons for it. Yep. Tories think it's a cover-up. What do you say?
Well, on the first point about the police, I think it's absolutely right that we don't do anything that compromises a live police investigation, and particularly one that I want to see done properly. And, you know, Peter Mandelson's currently being investigated for misconduct in public office. I want that to be properly done and investigated. If he, from everything that we've seen, it looks like he should be held to account, and I want that to happen. So,
his personal phone records are missing, and there's lots of WhatsApp messages that have conveniently disappeared. Is the allegation from the Tories?
When we understand from the documents released today that Peter Mandelson didn't release his personal phone during the vetting process, and I think part of this will result in a big, exploration and investigation into what can and should happen in future vetting processes. Because certainly in my mind, it's not acceptable that someone doesn't hand over their personal phone when they're asked to do so as part of an important vetting process.
Danny, haven't you got to hand it to the government that this is the biggest dump of documents since the Chilcot inquiry, into Iraq? It's very transparent. Admirably transparent, some would say.
Well, except for all the stuff that is actually relevant. I mean, as we've heard, a lot has been redacted. The key information is the exchanges that we haven't seen, which were between Peter Mandelson and Morgan McSweeney. Morgan McSweeney's phone was conveniently stolen.
Well, it was stolen. I mean, whether convenient
Well,
or
it was
not.
convenient, but I accept that it was stolen. And then Peter Mandelson has declined to provide his side of any conversations as well. We've seen some exchanges from ministers. But the fact is, we don't really know what went on in terms of the conversations between Number 10 and Peter Mandelson in the lead up to his appointment. The whole thing clearly stinks. And here we are now still scrabbling for the killer information. I agree, by the way, it's very important we recognise at the heart of this is a serious allegation of crime committed, particularly allegedly committed by Peter Mandelson years ago, which he denies. And let's do that. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's treat that properly. Let the process follow its way. But we really see from this information a lot of tittle-tattle, and crucially, I think the real the killer blow from my perspective politically is, all the people around Keir Starmer have been saying privately what we've all said publicly, which is this man doesn't know what he's doing, he has no vision, and he's not really in charge of the government.
Number 10's beleaguered and bereft. Beth, I mean, this is the real damage, isn't it? From what we do have is, cabinet ministers sort of bitching each other off and, Peter Mandelson bitching different cabinet ministers off. I mean, it's all pretty sordid, isn't it?
I mean, we were on television as a massive document dump happened over 1,500 pages, which we were then scrambling to go through. And for me personally, I thought what was absolutely fascinating was some of these private exchanges made public, because anyone watching this will know they perhaps wouldn't want their WhatsApp messages revealed. I mean, this is where people say private things that they don't expect to be made public. And the things that really stood out for me is the extent to which Peter Mandelson strayed from his brief. His brief was to be US ambassador to Washington, and he clearly spent a lot of time in Washington messaging people at the top of government, not just about foreign affairs, but a lot about domestic policy. And
His tentacles stretched everywhere, didn't they?
You see how Peter Mandelson becomes more and more critical of Starmer, the man who appointed him. No loyalty there at all. He talks about the advance buckle premiership. He talks about a lack of growth strategy. He has criticisms over welfare reforms, which actually I think for opposition parties, that is going to really have a long tail. That is going to hurt. You had Pat McFadden, who's now the Work and Pensions Secretary, at the time he was the Cabinet Secretary, saying, every meeting I have is, who can we tax in order to pay benefits to others? They're asking the wrong questions.
Let me just put that to Danny, because, I mean, that is, you're going to go to town on that, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good to see that Pat McFadden was talking sense when he was in the Cabinet Office. When he went to DWP, he just has maintained this complete inability on the part of the government to make any sort of meaningful welfare reform.
Well, Luciana, go on.
I don't accept that at all. I think I will judge Pat McFadden on what he has said in public and what he has said in the role as Secretary of State for Work and Pensions on numerous occasions, is that he wants to ensure that it's not what people receive, it's how this government can change people's lives. And we only have to see his response in the wake of the important report that came out last week about young people's unemployment and what we can and should be doing about that.
But why isn't he making it happen then?
Well, first of all, he's only been in the post for a number of months, and I think he has been very active across government. And what he does bring is the experience from the Cabinet Office, which is how you coordinate across government, because we're certainly not going to contend...
But Luciana, the only thing...
Let me finish my point. We're not going to contend and tackle the very serious issue of long-term youth unemployment if we don't look across government. It can't just be done from the Department of Work and Pensions, and that's certainly the experience that he brings from his previous role.
But I thought one of the really fascinating things in this document dump was when I came across what McFadden was privately messaging to Mandelson about the crisis of welfare reform that happened in the Labour government in the summer of last year. And I think for me, covering Starmer's government, that was the moment really that broke the consensus between the Prime Minister and the party, and it was the moment he lost control of his own administration when he had to back down from those welfare savings because of the rebellion.
But then he's absolutely the right person to then be in the job of trying to tackle and address those issues.
But it's not going to happen, Luciana, for the same reason.
But for that to be laid bare, that's really difficult for a Prime Minister, isn't it?
Yeah, we saw it.
I think there's lots of embarrassing things across. Sorry,
Can
Danny.
we just let Danny respond? He's been trying for a little bit.
Thank you. I mean, I remember very clearly being in the chamber when, literally in the debate that the party was being asked to vote through a very minute amount of welfare cuts. There was a rebellion right there in the chamber, and I totally agree with Beth. That was the moment the Prime Minister lost control of his party, and that was a year ago. And yes, they've changed the ministers around. Pat McFadden, like every sensible person, recognises the welfare bill is unsustainable. I'm afraid it's not enough to say we need to, think deeply and work across government. We need to cut welfare. We need to restrict the eligibility of people to have a life on benefits rather than being incentivised into work. He's saying it. We can all say it, but they're not doing it, and he can't do it. He can't do it because your colleagues in Parliament won't let him. This government is completely paralysed.
Right, let her respond to that.
Oh, I just don't accept that's the case. I think people acknowledge now, particularly in the wake of what's a very stark report from Alan Milburn, which is the future of this country, and we look at how many young people, hundreds of thousands of young people unemployed and set to be unemployed for an extended period of time and may never get into work, that is an issue that we have to tackle for our economy.
So is the Milburn report the Mandelson agenda then?
Well, no, he was appointed by the Prime Minister to do that report, and it was the right problem to be tackling in terms of how we ensure that we have growth in this country, how we ensure that we ensure that there's opportunity for the next generation. I'm keen that every next generation does better than the last. That's currently not what's happening.
But will the backbenchers let Milburn or let the Milburn report be enacted?
I think we're starting to see a shift. I think people are starting to understand that the bill cannot be limitless, and we have to do something to tackle it. And we're seeing that leadership from Pat McFadden in that role.
To be honest, Luciano, the thing that also struck me in this document dump, compared with when over 140 pages were released in February, was that in a way, the fact that there wasn't that much jeopardy for the Prime Minister in it kind of tells its story in itself.
So, Laura, it's sort of diminishing returns, isn't it?
I mean, it feels that his premiership is effectively done. And actually, if the party was very incensed about welfare now, or some of the criticisms about the failure of reforms, you come under a lot of criticism for that. But I think there's a kind of settled view that he isn't the person that will be trying to enact or not enact the Milburn report, right? It's kind of Starmer is done. And I think that had that sentiment not been across the party in Parliament, then this probably would have been a much more controversial set of data drop. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Listen, it's not a secret that we find ourselves in a
predicament.
No, I mean, we saw really very challenging results at the last elections that we had, local elections across the country. We have to recognise that and acknowledge that something has to be done about it because it's not sustainable.
Yeah,
and then
the best point is that his personal authority is already shattered. So what further can go wrong with these documents? The scandal is blown through.
Well, but I also reflect on the interview that you did with him, with the Prime Minister, Beth, where he acknowledged that, he made a mistake and that he got it wrong, and it's something that he tackles and he has to contend with on a frequent basis. And I was there in the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting that all the women were present because, there's a big challenge, particularly that we feel as female parliamentarians about this issue as well, where he was very responsive and very emotional in response to this. People are humans, we're not infallible. People make mistakes, and that's what's happened here. And I think he's wholly acknowledged that.
OK, well, much more to come from the two of you. But, Beth, thank you very much for that expert analysis. What a tour de force today. Thank you. Well, a little earlier, as everyone was digesting the files, I caught up with Dame Emily Thornberry, chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee over in Parliament, and asked her what stood out for her before she joined me on the sofa.
My thing is this huge gap between, what we know was that the deep vetting people said that he was someone to be very worried about and shouldn't be given, shouldn't pass. And Ollie Robbins saying, oh, but he was borderline, leaning against. But we had all these mitigations, and now there's no record of any of the mitigations.
Yeah. I caught you in the Commons earlier. You just made your intervention.
Yes.
Just explain, what emissions are you most worried about?
So I'm kind of focused on why it is that a man like this, given what we now know about him, how did he become ambassador for Britain into the United States, given that there was developed vetting? How did that happen?
And that means, in other words, there was further questions raised about his security.
I mean, there's because he was a political appointment and there was very strict vetting. And so, people should care about national security. They should care about conflicts of interest. And indeed, what happened was that the vetters said, no, don't appoint him. Don't appoint him. There were 2 red boxes as like he's a significant risk and shouldn't be appointed. But then the people in charge of the Foreign Office went, oh no, we appointed him because we introduced these mitigations. So I said, well, what mitigations are those? Oh, we can't tell you. So now that we're getting the materials, I'm like, I look at the 1,300 page, 500 page, and I'm looking for the mitigations. Nothing. There's nothing. So I was asking the minister today, is it because there was nothing? I mean, it would have to be written down, surely. If part of it was, don't do this, you mustn't do this, you can do this, don't see this person. It has to be written down.
And this is about conflicts of interest.
Conflicts of interest, but also just like, I also think kind of bordering on actually, threats to national security. I mean,
because
one of
his dealings with China and Russia, he denies there's any conflict of interest. By the way.
Seemingly close friendship with somebody who had been a spy master in Israel. Somebody's lent him £1 million, we don't know who, to buy shares in some secretive Israeli startup. I mean,
he denies there's any conflict of interest or any problem, we're told.
Yeah, I hear you. But, but I mean, I what I want to know is if Develop Vetting thought there was a problem and thought there was a security problem and said don't do it, and the Foreign Office go, no, I want to see how do we get from there to we're going to appoint him.
Right.
That's what I want from these papers.
And there's a lot of asterisks, covering all of those things you're talking about. You didn't really get an answer in the Commons today.
Well, the cops might have them. I mean, that's the thing, because the police have held a certain number of documents. So I was asking the minister, well, do the police have them? I mean, is that what's going on?
You didn't get a straight answer to that.
Or do they not exist? I mean, that's the central point. The central point, therefore, is we were under a lot of pressure. We don't want to admit it, but we were under a lot of pressure, and basically, we were told that we had to appoint him. In fact, he'd already basically been appointed, and we were to stop being so difficult, and he was to get the job. And so we skidded over all of these sorts of issues, and that is really serious.
Right, so there are still lots of unanswered questions. Yeah. However, the Intelligence and Security Committee has been shown this 9-page summary outlining why the vetting team recommended not giving Peter Mandelson clearance. I mean, so they might have some answers, the committee itself, but they're bound to secrecy on that point.
Yeah, I can't find that out, so I don't know. So it's difficult,
And we're hoping to interview the chair of the committee, but he probably won't be able to tell us.
I don't know if he'll be able to say anything.
So let's talk about what we do know from
I think what happens is that they get the summary, or the Foreign Office will get the summary, they will get the UKSV
security
vetting thing, and then they're supposed to, from what I understand, fill in a form going, OK, we hear you, but we don't agree because we're going to do this, this and this, it'll all be fine. So I don't know whether the Security Committee have been able to see that. Right. I would be very interested to see this. I want to know how it was that it went from don't appoint to it's fine. And also, it's fine, and we don't need to tell the Prime Minister.
Just while we're on the subject of what we don't know, Keir Starmer is sort of curiously absent from messages to and from Keir Starmer. He's sort of they're absent. Do you think that's because he wasn't central to his own government, or is that a cover-up?
I think it says two things. I think it says that Peter Mandelson and he didn't get on. There are no kind of cosy, WhatsApp messages backwards and forwards.
Which is a bit of a relief for the Prime Minister, then.
Well, no, I think it again shows, how did he get this job? There are all of these security problems, all of these conflict of interest. He was even applying for another job. He wanted to be Chancellor of Oxford. There was all of that going on too. So how did he come from being such an outsider to being the person who was given the job? And I think, and I put this to Morgan McSweeney, I think it was because Morgan McSweeney was his protégé and felt that it was he wanted to give his mentor the last big job. And he just went for it and pushed everybody else out the way, all objections out the way, went, right, I'm going to get this for you, Peter, and he did. And the PM is to be criticised because he's a busy man and if someone comes up to him and says, well, I tell you what, I'll do this for you, you're busy, I'll look after this bit. And he allowed someone else to take responsibility and he didn't he didn't do enough oversight. And I get that, you know.
And
but
Morgan
it's
Sweeney, obviously the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff.
Yeah, so the Chief of Staff who's resigned because of his role in the appointment. And I think that the Prime Minister probably gave him too much rope. I think that's what happened.
So let's talk about the plenty of embarrassing things that are in these great weighty tomes. I mean, members of the Cabinet, it is pretty humiliating for some in particular. Who do you think emerges with the reddest face?
I don't know. You see, you can tell me because I honestly have been focused on why did Mandelson get appointed? Because my job as Chair of Foreign Affairs is to make sure that the Foreign Affairs Committee, that the Foreign Office works properly, and this was clearly a major dysfunction.
Right.
And so I need to. That's what I'm doing.
Right.
You know?
Well, let me read you a few of the
gossip.
toe-curling.
Come on, then, tell me what the gossip is.
Well, the Welfare Secretary, Pat McFadden, says to Peter Mandelson, who can we tax to pay benefits to others? That's the question. That's going to come back to haunt him, akin to Liam Burns, you know, there is no money left, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't recognise that, I must say. I mean, I think there was a big debate about what do we do about a burgeoning welfare bill. And obviously part of it is that a very large proportion of the welfare, is it half or more than half, goes to pensioners. You know, are we going to stick to the triple lock? So that's a big debate. Are we going to, I mean, my view was the very basic, you know, benefit that you get, the unemployment benefit that you get, is so low that it genuinely can't be lived on. And I think for that reason, people are constantly trying to bolt on additional benefits onto that.
But Pat McFadden's point is a broader point about this Labour government's project, which he says, really, he's sort of bemoaning, he's having a bitch to Peter Mandelson, isn't it, about the fact that this is a regression to old Labour, you know, put the taxes up so that you can help people have better benefits.
Well, I think we do need to have a radical look at benefits, and we need to be honest about, you know, where we have got ourselves. And I think the basic benefit is too little. But I do think that also a lot of people do, out of desperation, go online, see how to answer questionnaires, you know, and
the
are
system's
getting
being
additional.
fiddled.
It's being taken advantage of, and we need to look again at that. But I think that it does also need to have the basic benefit raised.
But so do you hope that Pat McFadden stays in government as Welfare Secretary? Because he also told Peter Mandelson that government climb down on welfare would, and I quote, destroy the Prime Minister's authority. I mean, in the spirit of collective responsibility, should he be sacked?
We didn't say that sort of thing publicly. He's having a bitch privately, and I suppose...
That's OK?
Well, I mean, whether it's OK or not, it is the sort of thing that human beings do. They complain about their bosses, they complain about decisions that are being made, they complain about when they don't feel that they're being listened to. I mean, you know.
They also slag each other off big time, don't they? I mean, Wes Streeting... Peter Mandelson says about Wes Streeting, the former Health Secretary, said that he's having an early midlife crisis. He bemoans the fact that he got a wild, long, hysterical message from Wes about Israel. I pushed back, I can forward, but reflects pretty badly on his maturity, in my view. I mean, it's very embarrassing for him. He can't possibly contest the leadership, can he?
Well, I would have thought that probably with Labour Party members would be quite popular to hear that he's like, that Peter Mandelson doesn't like him as much as people thought that Peter Mandelson liked him.
Right, so saved by Peter Mandelson.
I don't know. I mean, you know, Mandelson doesn't hold back, and he is famous for his kind of, you know, waspish comments.
Well, let me give you one last waspish comment. That is a real tongue twister. He says, Keir lacks verve, as does the Cabinet as a whole. He also says it's messy because the government doesn't do policy, generally speaking, well enough. It all starts with policy. I mean, it's damning, but it's kind of what we know about this government, isn't it?
I think we also know that, you know, Peter Mandelson will be kind of, you know, sweet as pie when he wants something, but isn't necessarily someone to be trusted.
Standing back then, 1,500 pages later, I know you haven't read them all, but what we have read between us, how much further forward are we?
Well, I'd say I want to know how he got the job, and I haven't had those, and they're the important things. It's like what did the vetting mean? In order to get round the vetting, what did people agree to do, or did they not? Or did they just decide to look the other way?
But there's no killer blow from what we know already?
Not yet. I think we need to kind of wait for the third lot of papers that will come from the police. So once the police have finished their investigation, then I think there's going to be a third lot of papers. And at that stage, we have to say, I will be saying, have you answered my question yet? Why did he get the job?
But this one's going to run and run.
I'm afraid it's going to run and run.
Emily Thornberry, thanks very much.
Not at all.
Well, Luciana and Danny are on the sofa tonight. Luciana first, how concerned are you about potential conflicts of interest with Peter Mandelson's foreign clients?
Well, certainly from some of the emails that have surfaced today, that is a very significant and serious concern. And again, I think with hindsight and looking through all of this, there'll be big questions asked and answers that will need to come forward and action taken to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
And government by WhatsApp, I mean, you're opposed to that, are you?
I'm not opposed to people communicating across government. I think it's really important when quite often the charge is levelled that everything happens in a silo and people aren't connecting and communicating with each other. I think one of the challenges in terms of what's being released today is that we don't have all the information. No one's broken any rules. The rules currently say that you can have messages that aren't permanent. There's a review underway at the moment from the Cabinet Office, and I imagine this is something that will be looked at very closely.
Danny, you've written the book on reforming the civil servant. If the civil service, if reform gets into government, would government by WhatsApp have had its day?
Well, like Luciana, I don't think there's anything wrong with informal contact, and WhatsApp groups can be useful too. Clearly, you need to have proper decision making, and I think there is a real issue exposed by these files that we've seen a proper crossing of the line between what's properly public business, which is what Peter Mandelson was appointed to do as ambassador, and his own private interests. So I think that's what's been exposed, and I think we need to think deeply about how we ensure that ministers and officials, in fact, are genuinely held to account to serve the public, which is the job that they're paid to do, and that the private interests are excluded.
Bit of controversy about Peter Mandelson trying to introduce Keir Starmer to the boss of Palantir, Peter Thiel. He's a friend of Nigel Farage. Do you think that would be fair enough?
I think it's quite appropriate for him to make introductions like that. The problem is when there might be an entanglement of his own private interests, and that's what these files demonstrate. I mean, there's quite an interesting one suggesting that before he took up the job, but after he'd been appointed, he went on a paid trip to China, remunerated, so serving one of his Chinese clients, after he'd been given the green light to be the ambassador, and Number 10 approved that. So,
I mean, he denies any conflict of interest. I should restate that.
He does, but you see here the problem. And Peter Mandelson, I mean, he's had to resign from government twice before over exactly this. He's got a difficult relationship with money. I think we can say that.
Well, you could say that about Nigel Farage, actually.
Well, hang on. This is quite an important point, actually. So Nigel's being accused of being given a gift outside politics that was nothing to do with his political role. The problem
that's
we've got
his
here,
claim, but that is being challenged.
Yes, but here what we've clearly got is a public servant currently employed by the government, first when he was a minister and then latterly as ambassador, while retaining significant commercial interests. I think that's the problem.
You can't be double jobbing while you're in a civil service role, certainly not when you're ambassador. And again, we don't have all the information, but from what has surfaced today, that looks very, very murky and looks like that's what has happened during his short time as an ambassador in Washington. And certainly that cannot be the case for any ambassador who's representing the UK across the country, across the world, that they should in any way be allowed to be pursuing commercial interests concurrently whilst in those really important roles.
But Danny, I mean, you've got to hand it to the government, haven't you, that there's a lot of transparency here. I mean, these fat tomes, perhaps reform needs to be a bit more transparent about Nigel Farage's dealings?
Well, I mean, there's no equivalent. There's nothing to say. I mean, there isn't.
Because he hasn't told us.
Well, no, but nor can there be. I mean, if you're talking about his gift that he received as a private citizen, unrelated to politics, without any connection to his political work that only began afterwards, I mean, there is literally nothing to say about that.
You don't wish he declared it?
He didn't need to declare it. There is a parliamentary inquiry going on now, so let's find out what that concludes. I'm confident that it will conclude that he followed all the rules and there's no case to answer.
But there was, as I understand it, it was connected to his work of delivering Brexit, and that is political activity.
No, I think there was a sense in which that Christopher Harborne, who gave the gift, wanted to acknowledge Nigel's work, but it was unrelated to any services rendered or services to be delivered. So, no, it was a gift, and it was received, by the way, accepted gracefully by Nigel, because as a private citizen, but a very public figure, he had significant security needs, and he's used that money to ensure that he and his family will have the security they need for the rest of their lives.
But I can't be remunerated for the campaigning that I do and any results that I, might be part of securing in the work that I do politically. Why should anyone else?
No, he wasn't being paid. He wasn't being paid for anything he'd done or
but
anything he was going to do.
He was being belatedly rewarded for delivering Brexit.
It sounds like the donor was very grateful to him for the heroic work that he did on behalf of all of us, Luciana, to get Britain out of the EU. But it was not in any way a fee for any kind of service.
I feel like we're drifting off the current topic of conversation, but there's much more to come on this. And all of this is sure to feature heavily on our late night programme, The Wrap, tonight at 10 p.m. Here to discuss all of today's big stories and the best of tomorrow's papers will be Daily Mirror columnist Kevin Maguire and Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine. Still to come, how are Labour MPs reacting to this latest tranche of Mandelson files? We'll have the latest after a meeting of the parliamentary party tonight. Stay with us. Well, John Craig, our chief political correspondent, has been outside the meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party this evening. John, you've been listening in at the door. What's happening?
Well, 2 cabinet ministers. Normally it's just one. Earlier in the day, we were told Steve Reid was going to speak at the PLP tonight, but not long before 6 o'clock, we learned that perhaps as an emergency measure, panic measure you might even say, Darren Jones would go and face questions from unhappy Labour backbenchers about the Mandelson fiasco and all those revelations today. In fact, he only got a couple of questions. He said that it all went quite smoothly, the Labour MPs were not particularly hostile. He's obviously, we've seen a lot of Darren Jones trying to calm things down, calm MPs' nerves. But clearly there was a real operation by the Labour High Command tonight, because I counted, Mahmood, Healy, McFadden, Lammy, Phillipson, Chapman, Alexander, Reynolds and Ben from the Cabinet there. Big turnout of Cabinet ministers to give support to Darren Jones. The mood was not particularly mutinous. As you know, Cathy, the real usual suspects, the real rebels don't turn up to the Parliamentary Labour Party. However, I did talk to one grandee said to me, they're just digging in for all the wrong reasons. And so there is disquiet amongst senior MPs and indeed junior MPs. There was a call for more powers for the Intelligence and Security Committee so that the security services, the Cabinet Office, the Foreign Office don't have the power to block some of the disclosures when there's a humble address. So there is disquiet there. Some MPs were also talking about how this has really put the Prime Minister in more peril than he was before, because it confirms their worst fears about the Prime Minister. I talked to one of the ministers who quit a few weeks ago, who said that we can't go on like this. And the view of that particular ex-minister has hardened in the weeks since the resignations a few weeks ago. Now, Steve Reid gave a more philosophical speech. He talked about politics has lost, the public has lost faith in politics. Trust is broken. He talked about how there's growing inequality. The state feels unresponsive, remote. Public services don't work. One of the biggest indicators of those who vote reform are those who think the high street has declined. I mean, that sounds a bit like a manifesto for a leadership candidate, but Steve Reid's insisting he's not a candidate. It's not a leadership bid by him. But clearly, it sounds as though, doesn't it, that cabinet ministers, even loyalists like Steve Reid, are already talking about change and perhaps looking ahead to a different sort of Labour Party in the months ahead. The immediate problem for the government, of course, is the documents that have been published today. There's going to be a whole day's debate on Wednesday. The Leader of the House, Sir Alan Campbell, announced that. Gives MPs all day tomorrow to digest what we've learned today. And clearly the government is facing a very difficult few days, if not weeks. For example, Emily Thornberry, who you spoke to today, was saying that this is going to go on for some time now, this whole row. So there may not be one killer fact here, but there's a lot of embarrassing material. MPs, Labour MPs are pretty fed up. Tories are loving every minute, of course. They want to keep it going. And it was noticeable in Alex Burghart's attack in the House of Commons in response to Darren Jones's statement. He really went after the Prime Minister. And the Tories talk about kicking a man when he's down. Well, the Tories are putting the boot in on this one.
John, thanks very much. Luciana and Danny are on the sofa tonight. I mean, that's the point, isn't it, Luciana, that, you know, the PM is already down. Soon he might be out. This can't really do much more damage, can it?
I think it's certainly got some embarrassing moments within it, but it is transparency in terms of the volume of stuff that we've had today, and people are still obviously making their way through it, myself included. But
everybody knows the Prime Minister is on his way out. That's the point that John was making from the Parliamentary Labour Party.
Well, at the moment there isn't any leadership competition underway, but certainly we are, as a party, reflecting on what happened at the elections just a few weeks ago locally. I mean, we touched on it just a moment ago. Steve Reid, I think his contribution really reflects what people are hearing on the doorstep, and we have to look inward as a party and interrogate that and think about what needs to change and what we need to be doing into the future.
Danny, the problem you've got is that if the leadership has changed, then you may well struggle. And there was a poll today showing that the working class has abandoned Labour. You kind of want things to carry on and the Prime Minister to stay in place, don't you?
Whichever leader the Labour Party has, it's still the Labour Party. And even if they get a better politician as Prime Minister, and they can hardly do worse, the fact is they won't be able to do the things that are needed. They won't be able to fix the economy. They won't be able to stop the boats. They won't be able to deal with the problems of the high street that Steve Reid has been telling his colleagues about. The fact is this country's system of government doesn't work. I'm interested in Darren Jones, by the way. I mean, he's also seems to be putting himself forward, and I think he's an interesting case. He's got a nice bedside manner. He's very reassuring. But he's the one.
You'd vote for him, would you?
Well, I mean, he's the one in charge of the Cabinet Office. So he's the one I'm interested in, because he's actually got the power to fix the essential system of government that is broken in our country, which is this overwhelming power of unelected civil servants who take the decisions behind the scenes. So I don't think it matters who the Labour leader is until we fix the system of government itself.
You sounded quite Blairite.
But I've read your stuff, Danny, and actually, you want to get away with, you want to do away with the Cabinet Office.
Yes.
But I think it's really important in terms of coordinating and making sure that we don't have these silos.
That's what the Prime Minister's office should be. We've got 11,000 people in the Cabinet Office under Darren Jones, and more importantly under the Cabinet Secretary, Antonio Romeo, unelected official who's really in charge of the government. We don't need that whole bureaucracy. We need a Prime Minister with genuine authority and a team in Number 10 who can genuinely take decisions and do that important work of coordination. But the civil service as a whole is over 500,000 people. And the centre is bloated as well. We just need a strong, lean, efficient centre under a Prime Minister who knows what he or she is doing. That's what we lack at the moment, and I can't see that changing with any Labour leader because of the party that you're part of.
You equally talked about the value of having Darren Jones as Cabinet Office Secretary, and I think he's doing a really important job in that role.
Would you back him for the leadership?
There's no leadership contest.
So you're a Keir woman?
I just want the party to do well. I want the country to do well. That's
okay. Well, that's not Keir Starmer then.
I do want us as a party to reflect on what's happened over the course of the last few weeks in particular. I've got lots of friends that are councillors up and down the country that did a really important job of delivering for the communities that they serve and are so connected to the areas in which they live in. And I think it's...
Do you want a long reflection? I mean, the summer of reflection.
Well, as I said, we don't have a leadership contest underway at the moment. What we do have is a really important by-election, and that's where all of our focus is at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I sympathise with Luciana. I remember when I was in the Tory party in the last Parliament, it was like this, we're desperately trying to shore up these broken leaders who are, inevitably going to collapse within weeks or months. A split party can't govern, and Labour is paralysed. It can't deliver, and the sooner we get the whole lot out and have an election and get reform in, the better.
I just want to pause you because we've actually got the chair of the Intelligence and Select Committee, Lord Beamish, Kevin Jones, on the line now. Kevin, I know we were trying to get you all show. Thank you very much for joining us straight off a plane. Just tell me first, how concerned are you by the scale of the redactions in these documents, this great 3 volumes that we've received today?
Well, we had a clear task to do, and that was to
redact on national security grounds and the damage to international relations. We took the view that where we could keep things in the public domain, we did. And I think that is what we did in terms of our redactions. The other redactions, obviously for commercial reasons and confidentiality, we didn't, we were not responsible for those.
There was a 9-page summary outlining why the vetting team recommended that Lord Mandelson be blocked as ambassador. I know your committee has seen that. I know you can't comment for all sorts of reasons, but how concerned were you when you saw that summary?
Well, we have seen the summary document, and we understand that is with one of the documents which is with the Metropolitan Police, so it will not be released. We have done a redaction process on that document. We also agree with the government that the larger vetting document shouldn't be released to the committee, even though it is covered by the humble address, and that's because there are concerns that that would undermine the vetting process going forward, which I think, as a committee, we agree with.
Right, and are you confident then that we, the public, poring over these 1,500 pages, have got the full story then?
Well, remember, this has not been ministers doing this. This has been civil servants that have been dealing with this. We've taken the job extremely seriously. We've spent many, many hours reading these documents. The concern for us is the lack of, for example, WhatsApp being used and the lack of retention of records. And I think the use of low-side systems and the, I think, complete absence in some cases of any type of audit trails, certainly in the Foreign Office, being kept. And they're points we've raised in a letter to the Prime Minister.
So disappearing WhatsApps, disappearing messages are a menace to proper government?
Well, it is a modern communication tool, but the problem is, and we raised this with the last government, when we had a situation where a Foreign Office minister's WhatsApps were disappearing, is, WhatsApp could perhaps be used for certain circumstances, but it shouldn't be used for security classification, highest classification. And if things are decided over WhatsApp or agreed over WhatsApp, they should be retained in the audit trail. They clearly weren't in many cases.
And how concerned are you? What we do, and let's look at what we have seen rather than what's been redacted or lost. How concerned are you that Peter Mandelson recommended that the Prime Minister meet Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal and Palantir?
Well, they're all part of an ambassador, any ambassador's role, I would say. But I think obviously what makes it, and people raise questions, are not for me to comment, is the issue of his commercial interests, which are not just been highlighted in the last few weeks, but I think are pretty widely known anyway.
In terms of what we've been able to see, the 1,500 pages, there's a lot of embarrassing to and fro between cabinet, between Peter Mandelson and various cabinet ministers. I mean, it's embarrassing rather than a killer blow from what we can see.
Well, yes, but when we started doing this as a committee, and I said at the time, embarrassment wasn't a reason for why things should be redacted. And there are things that particularly the Foreign Office wanted redacting, we didn't redact, and you're seeing that today. So I think as a committee we've taken the job very seriously in terms of certainly guarding national security. We're used to doing that in the way we deal with our own reports. In the new aspect in terms of the damage to international relations, we took a view that the embarrassment wouldn't be a reason for redaction.
And just finally, when you look at Peter Mandelson's handwritten note to the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, saying, "You'll never regret appointing me," your reflections on that?
Well, quite ironic, isn't it? But I think a lot of things in this also, I think, raise questions about what people put in emails and WhatsApp messages. And I think, judgment sometimes isn't always followed through.
And just a brief final thought. I mean, does this make the Prime Minister's position any less tenable tonight, or was he already humiliated enough?
Well, I think we've trailed this long enough. I don't think there's anything in here which damages directly the Prime Minister. Comes back, I think, which to what everyone says is the original decision to appoint Peter Mandelson.
Got to leave it there. Kevin
I can
Jones,
say
thank
as
you
a
very
committee,
much.
we've done the job.
Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you to Luciana and Danny here on the sofa. That's it for tonight, but we'll see you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Bye-bye.